Thanks a lot for this opportunity. It's great to join this fantastic workshop, even though I wanted to join in person. But nevertheless, it's great to be virtually present in this exciting conference. So the topic of my presentation is mobility planning, data versus perception. Now, we all know that the world today is more urban than rural. And almost last decade, we crossed this threshold of, of looking at world from the urban versus the rural lens. And so as we move forward, even countries like India, which are slightly slow in the urbanization curve, will be more urban than rural. And therefore, the population of the world will be more urban. So it's going to become an urban world. Now, we all know why this happens, because cities are the engines of growth. They are there for a prosperity. And if you look at these curves, you will realize that maybe where the conference is happening, we are much more an urban population. And then kind of looking at some of the countries like India, and even China is also catching up. But it is basically that that's where the wealth is produced. That's where the economic activities are happening, and that's is driving the change towards urbanization. But with this urbanization also comes a lot of issues. Well, greenhouse gas emission is one, and it's often said that the battle for climate change will be either won or lost in cities. There is also this issue of motorization, as it's usually manifests in terms of urbanization. And this is a picture from one of the Indian cities. And if I would ask this to my fellow countrymen, I would get at least 20 to 30 different responses which this city is. So the point is, you can paste this image to almost any traditional Indian city. And this is what the mobility is all about. And typically when we see this, more from the planning side, or when a city engineer sees this, or a planner in a metropolitan council sees this, he plans for a solution. And the solution is usually this: let's build more roads, let's expand our roads, let's create double-decker roads, let's reclaim sea to create more roads. Roads, and more roads is usually how we envision to solve this whole the chaos of mobility. But is that the right approach? I don't think so. This is the slide which shows how Indians commute to work. And this is not a sample survey, but this is the census of India, which for the first time last decade, 2011, captured how Indians commute to work. So what you see this red is that almost a third of the population actually doesn't travel to work. They live in so close proximity. The other important mode of transport is walking. So if you add walking and cycling, you are looking at almost a third of Indians actually walking or cycling to work. And if you look at cars, which is what I showed in my previous picture, the number is almost 3%. So 3% people using cars to work get almost 97% of infrastructure. And this is not that this is something in the hinterland of villages. In fact, bulk of our cities also have a substantive proportion of walking and cycling. And if you add that public transport and paratransit together, you are looking at almost 2/3 of the population either walking or cycling or using public transport to work, and also to other services. Now, this is an interesting slide. And this is what I call the urbanization S-curve. If you look at countries, whether it's Europe, Latin America, or North America, these countries have reached a very stable urban population. But India and some of the other countries are still playing the catch-up game. So We will stabilize when we reach that 80-85% mark, which means a bulk of our urban infrastructure is yet to be built. So if 30% urbanization is showing us this problem, imagine what will happen when we reach 75-80% mark. It's scary, but that's also an opportunity because our urban infrastructure, two-thirds of our urban infrastructure is yet to be built. And we know that while you can recover from long-term capital shocks, short-term capital shocks, or even this pandemic that we are facing in a couple of years, but the infrastructure choices that we make, the land use choices that we make are there for generations. So what do we do? How do we plan? Which is based on data and not perception. So we did some simulation for a city which had a population of 5.4 million in 2001. And it was supposed to grow to almost 13.2 million in 30 years. Now we have these two options to plan the city. Either we can build the city in terms of compact, mostly around mass transit corridors, or we can build in an automobile sprawl development. Both these situations will have the same amount of population, but look at the area requirement. Almost half of area required. Look at the emission, almost 10 times less. Look at road traffic deaths, almost 4 times less. So this is what we have to do. While there's a huge talk about doing metros, but believe me, metros alone will not solve the problem because the scale of magnitude is something different. So what do we do as mobility planners? First and foremost, safe walking infrastructure. I think we can't have roads which do not have safe walking infrastructure. It's criminal. We are losing almost 1.4 million people every year due to road traffic deaths. Bulk of them are vulnerable road users. So walking and safe walking has to be the paramount importance as we plan our cities. Second, we have to reimagine cycling. We still have the notion that cycling is a poor man's mode of transport. It is not. And one of the good things which has come out of COVID is the fear of getting the bug due to shared mobility is forcing people to reimagine cycling. It is forcing governments to reimagine cycling. Therefore, using this COVID crisis as an opportunity to reimagine our cycling as a mode of transport and reimagine how do we recycle our streets and how do we recycle our cities. Third, we need more buses. I mean, if you look at this number buses per capita population that India has, we are abysmally very low number. And while there is a great attention to metro, we are missing the bus, literally. So we need to have more buses, almost 3 to 4 times what we have right now. And currently, India has about only 30 to 35,000 buses at a national level, which run on urban operations. Therefore, this number has to grow, and this number has to grow dramatically in cities. Last, but definitely not the least, we need to manage informal transport. Cities, bulk of our cities have 10 times more people on informal transport than formal transport, like buses. Therefore, how do you reimagine this informal transport, which comprises diverse mode, ranging from a cycle rickshaw to an electronic rickshaw to three-wheeled autos to micro mobility and to bigger something which is in between a bus and an auto rickshaw. Therefore, we can do it, but I think we have to start using the data and we have to start using data-based decision making. It's very long. For many years, we have been planning mobility based on perception. It's time we plan based on data. And with this, I'll end my presentation. Thank you so much.